A large 2020 study published in the International Journal of Epidemiology concluded that a high consumption of red meat and processed meat was strongly associated with an increased risk of colorectal cancer. Do you agree? So, yeah, this is interesting here. I don't really agree. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff with this type of a conversation here. And I think this is why the vegan diet's going to die out. Yeah, there's going to be a little flare here with the climate change stuff with the red meat causes cancer, but I think people are realizing that on a vegan diet, it just doesn't make sense that it can be healthier when you have to supplement everything. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. So I don't know how true this is. I think with processed meat, we can understand that there's a lot of issue with certain preservatives, maybe even the nitrates. There's probably issue with maybe even quality of meat. I think something with the antibiotics probably affects you. I think the suffering of the animal might even affect you. I know that's kind of like a spiritual thing, but I think there is something to be said with the with the like the suffering. There's actual hormones in it. I don't want to say it's like a specific hormone or not because I don't know the numbers on that, but there are specific hormones that are in there, and I cannot remember at what levels, but they are higher. And I think that's the point of like halal and kosher meat, to reduce the suffering. So yeah, I guess with this one, it's a tough one. A lot of people are like, if you look at the comments of this type of conversation, people are, they're a little bit arguing here because one good point to bring in is, one, it's ancestrally correct to say a lot of groups of people did eat, saturated fats. And I think that's the big argument here is there's an argument for saturated fats being a main reason why red meat's so bad versus like chicken. But that doesn't really always hold up when you look at certain populations. Of course, certain studies suggest, but I would say with this type of stuff, you have to be very careful because there's a lot of money in saying that, right now there's a lot of money at least in kind of going the opposite way from whole foods. And it's just one of those things where it's like, like this guy saying right here, basically, ancestral foods cannot be blamed for modern diseases. People have been curing meats with nitrates, smoke, and salt probably before we learned how to grow grains. And I totally agree. I mean, we have been cooking meat for a while too, while also eating it raw. And I think that's why our stomach acid's, pretty high. Our pH is really low. It's acidic. Probably because, we were eating some scraps. That's the idea. I don't know how accurate that is, but that is the idea. And so at the very least, yeah, we were cooking and eating raw meat. But even when you're cooking it, like, if that's what's making the red meat so bad, I don't know how evolutionarily consistent that is, considering there's lots of groups of people that did eat meat and cooked it. And so it's one of those things where, I don't know. I don't know the answer, and I don't think anyone can say that this is a good study just because there's a lot of things that counter it. And that's what these nutrition studies, they're a little hard to do because you either get lab studies on and that's just what makes studies hard in general. You know what I mean? But with the food, it's hard because when you get like mice, how can you say it's the same thing in an animal like a mouse? And I don't think you can. And, I don't know though. It's a tricky one. With the GMOs, I am one that believes okay, the mice got real sick with GMOs. So yeah, I wouldn't eat GMOs. But in some ways, I kind of look at that as different because I just don't trust the idea of putting random genes in a different plant. Whereas this is eating a whole food. So, I don't know. You look at like Hong Kong, and someone's actually bringing this up. Hong Kong has like the highest, life expectancy, and they eat the most red meat. So, I mean, it is an interesting thing. And I mean, Hong Kong is a busy city too. So it's not like it's a stress-free zone either. So it is very interesting there. Look right here. Someone says, it is regrettable that you have not provided the actual odds ratio so I can see if the association is truly strong in statistical terms. And it's basically saying only one of a number of such epidemiology studies show that association. It should be noted that this association between red meat and colorectal cancer is only observed in countries where most of the red meat consumed is beef. In countries where the red meat is from goats or sheep, the association disappears. Wow. That's interesting right here. Good thing I read this. That's an interesting thing out there. I guess someone's saying genetic material from some bovine viruses, including bovine herpes viruses and bovine papillomaviruses have been found in human tumors. Huh. Interesting. We should have a whole podcast about this. This stuff is so crazy to me because as a former vegan, I can understand the concerns here. Some of those documentaries scare the poop out of you. I mean, they just really scare you. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't know what to say about it because I say most of the red meat attack is coming from the saturated fat, but then this one is saying it's something with the colon. And look, processed meat I don't think is something you should be really looking forward to. Look out for these preservatives because they definitely hurt you. I think, I don't know. It's a tough one. I do say, I know a guy who actually only eats lamb, halal grass-fed lamb. So yeah, the other thing too is I think grass-fed beef might make it something. Look, because the cow is obviously a domesticated animal, it's somewhat of a hybrid. It is meant to eat grass, like evolutionarily speaking, and you can get grass-fed cow. You can't really get like an insect-eating chicken. So that's the other argument there. So, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the beef wasn't grass-fed. I always say go for grass-fed if you can, but if you're really on a budget, it's probably better to go for factory farmed meat than it is to go for more processed foods and just rely on supplements. And that's really the argument there.